Let's face it, vegan and Thanksgiving are two things that typically do not go together. I'd have to say cooking green bean casserole is probably one of my favorite dishes. Every Thanksgiving, I don't know why, I've just always loved it. So I have perfected the perfect green bean casserole recipe. It's completely vegan, the textures are right, the flavors are right, and it is absolutely delicious. And I can guarantee that your family, if they're not vegan, will not even be able to tell the difference. Hey, what's up? My name is Camy. If you guys aren't familiar, welcome. Welcome to the Plant-Based Kitchen. We cook plants here and we enjoy eating plants here. So just because you're eating healthy does not mean you have to miss out on all that great flavor. So we're live. Thank you so much for joining and coming to cook with me this fine evening. We're gonna be a little bit more in our natural environment here. So I'm just gonna cook through this recipe with you guys. I'm super excited to share with you. As I mentioned, it's one of my favorites and I have cooked this several times. I was joking with my husband, we've been already eating Thanksgiving for months because I have been perfecting this recipe. It is a part of my brand new vegan top 10 Thanksgiving recipe ebook. So if you want to check that out, be sure to go down in that description box. But yeah, we've been cooking and enjoying Thanksgiving for months now just to refine these recipes. So I'm super excited. This one is absolutely dynamite. So let's get started. First things first, let's preheat the oven. All right, we're gonna set this guy to 350, get it going. So that should be ready to go by the time we dive in. And second, let's prep some of our fresh ingredients here. So there's a few things that you're gonna need. You're gonna need white onion, garlic, because onions and garlic, it's every recipe I swear starts off with onion and garlic and it just tastes so good. And it smells so good. Every time I just start cooking, all I'm cooking is like literally garlic, and my husband comes out and he's like, it smells so good, what is that? It's just garlic. So onion and garlic. We are going to be using some mushrooms, so those are gonna be absolutely delicious. We have butter, broth, milk, flour, and then of course, the crispy onions. And if you wanna pick some of these up, I've linked them again in the description box below so you can find these. This is a huge bag. And I thought I was out of control when I first bought it, but the truth is, this thing makes like 3 green bean casseroles. I know because I've made more than 3 green bean casseroles to perfect this guy. So be sure to pick one of those up. And then of course we have our green beans and then the salt and pepper. So that's the brief overview. Getting started though, I'm going to preheat my stainless steel pan. It's very important if you're using stainless to preheat them before we get started. So these things heat up really fast, so I'm going to just leave it there. And I have pre-prepped some of this ingredients already just to spare you literally staring at me chopping up things. But I did want to show you, I have a video on this, you can check it out on my channel, but chopping onions is pretty cool. If you want to learn how to cut this without crying, check that video out. But we always start with a sharp knife, because cutting with a dull blade is more dangerous than cutting with a sharp blade. So the key to cutting an onion is you want to cut along the root. If you cut sideways like this, tear gas, all right? So we're just gonna use half an onion here. It's really big also. Can we just talk about how large this onion is? In my recipe, I say large onion, and I got this, I was like, wow, that really is a large onion. So just half is fine. Just peeling off a couple layers. I've been told that my personality is complicated, like layers of an onion, but whatever. So just cut off the end here. You can see the root is still intact. What? I could hold this by my face? I'm not crying? Yeah, you're welcome. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna quickly run my blade down this guy. And we're gonna get some nice strips in here. I'm not completely chopping these. If I were to pick this up, it's still intact. but you can see the lines go all the way down. And this is gonna give us a really good foundation to now just run our blade back the other direction and get really nice fine pieces of onion, which we want for this recipe. Now my pan is pretty much preheated behind me, so I'm gonna throw my butter in. It's very important to always throw some sort of butter, oil, not cheap oil, like olive oil, high quality oil in our stainless, because we don't want things to get stuck. So I'm gonna take 2 tablespoons of butter here and just throw that in behind me so that I can get all nice and melty. Okay, so back to our onion here, because we multitask, that's what chefs do. I'm going to finely chop this, and you can see how quick this goes. Obviously I'm taking a little bit longer because I'm explaining it, but I almost always use onion with everything. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but these are really nice, fine little squares, really, really great texture for your recipes. And what I love most about this too is I'm a little bit passionate about cooking without wasting as much as I can. So you can actually take this root and chop around it all the way down. And you can see literally that is all I'm left with for the waste. Pretty cool. So I got my half an onion here. I'm just gonna throw this into my bowl. So that is step 1 here. Half an onion, chopped. Awesome. Now, step 2 is we're gonna do the garlic. And again, to spare you, I've already done 2 of the 3 cloves here. But to show you, we're going to smash this guy to easily peel off its shell. I do like to chop off this little like rough butt. It's weird texture, I don't want that in my food. So what I do is I just take my knife and I slice this way into really thin strips. I turn it, I slice that way, and then I run my blade back over to get a nice fine texture on the garlic. Garlic can kind of be a pain to cut, but I use it almost every time I cook because again, it is so delicious. So I've gotten a little bit used to it, but it's kind of sticky and weird and falls apart, so it can be a little bit hard. So I like to run my blade over it both ways and then kind of like organize it in a pile and then rock my blade back and forth. And that gives a nice fine texture on my garlic and really nice uniform pieces, because no one wants a giant piece of garlic in their food while they're eating. So scrape this off here, and I like to use the blade of my knife to pick it up gently, don't cut yourself, to put it right back in there. So onions and garlic done. Now I can hear this butter behind me. It's just about melted here. So it's time to throw in the onions and garlic. I don't know if you guys can hear it. No better sound. So onions and garlic in. Just grab a spoon. I like wooden spoons because they don't scratch up my stainless here. So I'm just gonna mix these around to coat them in the melted butter. Vegan butter, obviously, right? This is a vegan meal. Yes. So I'm just gonna leave that to simmer a little bit. And we're gonna talk about these mushrooms really quick. So be sure to wash the mushrooms. These are baby Bella mushrooms, and this is 8 ounces worth. Be sure to wash these guys before doing anything. Like mushrooms grow in dirt, and they usually come covered in dirt. Even if they say pre-washed, when I wash them, dirt always comes off. So again, I've already pre-chopped most of these, but I wanted to show you the technique. These are, again, baby Bellas, and usually you can just pull the stem right out, give it kind of like a little light twist, stems. And if you don't want to do that, you can always just cut them off here. I've done that too, it works. And then I do like, usually when we cut, we want to curl our fingers under, so this blade just glides across our knuckle and we're not worrying about actually cutting our fingers, right? So we want to try to be careful. I am going to change my technique a little bit. I like to put one slice in and then keep it pinched and carefully cut down the length of it, because I do want to get these into nice uniform pieces. And if I can keep it together while I cut it, it actually helps so much, because now you can see I chopped down through. I can just turn it the other direction and run my blade down, and it makes it so easy to get these mushrooms in really nice, even pieces. So that's important for this recipe, because you want the mushrooms to cook evenly when we throw it in. Basically what we're doing, if you haven't caught on already, is we are starting off this recipe. You want the mushrooms to cook evenly. Cream of mushroom soup. And usually what you do is just go and pick up a can at the store. I don't know if you've been able to find it, but I have not been able to find a can of vegan cream of mushroom soup. So I just am making it from scratch, and it's actually not that hard to do. I'll show you in a second the rest of the steps here, but it's super easy, and it's really flavorful. So it by far beats any can. So now that we have not that hard to do, our mushrooms broken in a second here, the rest of the steps here, but it's super easy, and it's really flavorful. So it by far beats any can. To the pan. And once again, you're going to want to just toss these mushrooms around. Make sure that they're fully coated with the butter mixture in here. And then I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit just to help them cook more quickly. And then we can get going. So, like I said, I've always been cooking this since as early as I can remember. Like, as soon as I was out of high school and I started bringing dishes to Thanksgiving, I always would just make green bean casserole, probably because I didn't really know how to cook, and it was the easiest thing to do. I just go to the store, you know, pick up a can of cream of mushroom soup, couple cans, Campbell's, of course. They have the green bean casserole recipe right on the back. So you just follow the recipe, pick up some onions, mix them with some green beans, and you're done. So that's always what I love to make. And it kind of just was always something that I loved as a part of Thanksgiving ever since. So I think it's maybe just nostalgia, and I actually love the creamy texture of the soup. It's got all of the boxes checked for me. It's creamy, it's a little bit savory. I love the taste of mushrooms as well. My husband doesn't really like mushrooms as much. Not a huge mushroom guy. It's more of a texture thing for him. He likes the flavor. So if you're one of those, you can chop these even smaller. Like, if someone has an issue with the texture of mushrooms, that's one of the reasons why I cut them quite small. You can definitely do them larger if you want to. It'll kind of accomplish the same thing for you. So feel free to customize that as you need. But these are just about sweating down. I'd probably cook this for another 2-3 more minutes. But for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next thing for us. So what we want to do, once the mushrooms start to get a little softer and mushy, and they'll start turning a darker brown color, they won't be as white, and you'll be able to kind of tell that they've shrunken a little bit more in size when they start to get done. So I am going to throw in a couple pinches of salt and some pepper. That's one of the big tips that I can give you guys. As you cook and learn to cook and add more flavor into the recipes that you're making, seasoning as you go, hands down, is one of the most important things that you can do. Because if you think about it, a lot of people just want to cook whatever and then wait until the end and just throw whatever seasoning in. But if we season as we go, every layer of food is picking up that nice, robust flavor. And that's why when you taste a dish and you're like, oh, there's so many layers of flavor in this, that's because we're seasoning the different layers as we go. And there really is no replacing that. You can't fix that at the end of a dish, because you've already missed out on getting all those great flavors in. So now that we have this reduced down, salt and peppers in there, I'm going to throw in 3 tablespoons of flour. And if you guys are gluten intolerant, you guys can replace this out with whatever other flour you want. But this is kind of similar to like making a gravy at this point. My knife is like spinning around. I'm like, death trap. So it's a little bit similar to kind of like what you do for gravy. You have like the base in there and all the flavor, and then you throw in the flour and you kind of mix it in. So 3 tablespoons of flour. And I'm just gonna mix the flour in until all of the onions and mushrooms are fully coated. So you just mix it around. And what it also does too, it's really great, is as you reduce down the mushrooms, you'll notice that the mushrooms do release a lot of liquid. And so putting in flour like this helps absorb all of that liquid, and it picks back up that flavor from the mushrooms that came out, and it kind of just keeps it back in like the soup that we're gonna be making. So I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's kind of like a paste texture now. So we are getting close here. So once we're done with that, we're going to put in our liquids. So 3 different liquids, like I said before. Oh, I forgot to mention the Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire. So we're gonna put that in too, and that's a little addition of my own, if I do say so myself, because it just adds, again, that depth of flavor. So it's gonna be super simple. We're gonna throw in 1 cup of broth, vegetable broth. Again, hashtag vegan. Veggie broth. And if you have a stainless pan like me, I'm gonna give you guys a quick tip here. So controlling your heat and deglazing your pan, which means you have a bunch of little brown bits at the bottom and you're throwing liquid on top, and those brown bits release. That's what we're doing here as a part of this process. Yes, we're making like cream of mushroom soup, so we need to put the broth in, but I start off specifically with the broth, and I use my wooden spoon to kind of scrape along the bottom, because when things brown on the bottom of a pan, it has so much flavor just packed in there. And if you can deglaze your pan with liquid, sometimes I honestly just do like a couple tablespoons of water and then mix it back in your food. Your food is gonna be so much more flavorful, because all that flavor is not stuck to the bottom of your pan. You're getting it back into whatever it is that you're cooking. So deglaze our pan. Now we're just gonna do a cup of soy. And you guys can use whatever milk you want with this. I personally like the texture and the flavor of soy milk. I think it's like the closest to real milk to me, and I like using it the best in cooking. And it's a little bit thicker. Sometimes almond milk can be like watery and kind of grainy, and I find soy milk doesn't do that to me. So it tends to be a lot better for cooking, but feel free to replace it with whatever your heart desires. I would say too, to me, soy milk is pretty flavorless. I feel like oat milk could probably be good. Like the flavor of the oats could go really well with the mushrooms. Like an oaky flavor thing going on. I feel like that could be good. So feel free to experiment. What is that saying? The world is your oyster, I think. Anyway, so this is gonna simmer for 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes. So I'm gonna let that go. I am gonna add in the Worcestershire sauce because I keep forgetting about it. This stuff is really great, by the way. I don't know if you've used this, but especially in vegan cooking, it's got a real meaty flavor. So anytime I'm trying to like marinate tofu to get it to have more of like a meaty flavor, or I've used this to marinate jackfruit. I don't know if you guys have ever cooked with jackfruit before, but it has a really great like like flaky meat texture to it. And if you can pack a lot of flavor in there, it's like so good with tacos. I've made nachos with it. I've made cute little, Trader Joe's has the cutest little burger sliders. And I've made some like barbecue pulled pork, like jackfruit things. And Worcestershire was the main ingredient there. So we'll add this in and let this simmer. It's gonna, again, simmer for like 10 minutes. Now, one of the things that I'll definitely say is that as this simmers, I talked about deglazing. So when you mix in the flour on this, you're going to get a little bit of like a coating on the bottom of that flour. So one of the things that I'm intentional about, and again, why I use a wooden spoon, because it doesn't scratch my stainless, is I run this spoon along the bottom, and you can feel when there's like a buildup on the bottom, and that buildup helps, like it thickens, and when you scrape it back up, it helps keep the soup nice and thick. So be sure to kind of scrape the bottom like that and keep stirring it as it thickens. But you guys will see it's pretty soupy right now, and it's gonna thicken up a lot. So next steps, we're pretty close to being done actually with this recipe. Like once this thickens up and our cream of mushroom soup is done, we are pretty much done. I mean, that is it, and that's all we're going for. So I'm gonna prep the rest of this here just to get ourselves ready. So you can strain your green beans, and if you're using a can, I like to just remove the lid and literally hold my hand over it, dump that water right out. I don't put it in a strainer and rinse it or anything like that. But you do want to be sure to get all the liquid out if possible, because if you think about it, our green bean casserole, some of the recipes that I made didn't start off doing a cream of mushroom soup like this. It was just like, oh, throw some soy milk in and some like vegan cheese, and it just was too liquidy and soupy when I baked it, and it didn't have the right texture. So this is gonna end up being really thick and nice, and I'll show you guys at the end. But if you think about it, it's important to strain our green beans fully because we don't want to add in too much liquid and undo that gorgeous thick texture that our soup is going to add. So another thing too that I have a quick tip for you guys. Again, I made this recipe a million times, but I tried a couple different types of green beans, and I highly recommend getting some that are pre-salted. I tried the non-salt ones because I really wanted to like try to cut salt and be healthier. Y'all, the flavor difference in the green bean casserole itself was like monumental. So you don't have to use canned if you're gonna cook these green beans from scratch. You know, cut off the ends, cut them down to little, 1-inch pieces here. Cook them in your pot of boiling water. Be sure to add a decent amount of salt into that water while they cook. You're gonna want that salt to absorb into the green beans as much as possible. And then, once they're done cooking and they're the right texture, remove them from the heat, and you can blanch them, so you can drop them in like ice water to stop them from cooking, or else the vegetable is gonna overcook because it's gonna continue to cook itself even if you remove it from the heat. So you can go through that whole process if you really, really want to. If you want to kind of make this a little bit more from scratch and a little bit healthier. I know some people don't like canned food as much. So be sure to try that. But I just like using regular green beans because, let's face it, when you are hosting Thanksgiving and you're making all the recipes, my book again has 10 recipes and then even 2 bonus appetizers. You have 2 mains, 8 side dishes, and then 2 bonus appetizers. And I've even put together like a full shopping list because we all know grocery shopping during Thanksgiving is an absolute nightmare. I've even organized it by section of the store for you, so you're welcome. So I've put all that in there, and I can just say from experience, sometimes just the shortcut on Thanksgiving specifically is just a lifesaver. In my book, I have homemade dinner rolls and mashed potatoes, gravy that's absolutely delicious, of course, stuffing. I have like mushroom Wellington and meatloaf for the mains and all sorts of amazing recipes. That's a lot to cook. I am genuinely personally cooking all of those recipes for my family this year. These are really actually my family recipes that I'm sharing with you. So just buying it. I tried to do it healthy one year. I'm gonna make green bean casserole. I'm gonna do fresh green beans and everything. And y'all, it's a lot of work. Like making Thanksgiving for everybody is a lot of work. So, you know, do whatever your heart desires. But if I had any tips for you, if you're a first time Thanksgiving hoster, like shortcuts like this will save your life. So this soup is looking really good back here, you guys. I wish you can smell it. Honestly, the smell of cooking mushrooms, I mentioned the garlic and the onion as well at the beginning, but mushrooms smell so good to me. Like I literally love them so much. And they're actually really have a lot of great vitamins in them. Vitamin D, if you need some vitamins, so watch out. Okay, so this is just about done. I'm gonna turn the heat down because this is getting a little bit wild. And we're there. I'm like looking, I'm like, did I forget anything? No, I did not. So you guys can use whatever you want for this last part. I have cooked in a cast iron before. I love these really deep ones. They're super cool because they can just pop in the oven. If you guys want to use like a baking dish or something that needs to be deep and has some body on it, feel free to kind of use whatever you want. I'm gonna throw this in my cast iron because I think it looks really cool. So what you do is just dump all your green beans in, and then we're gonna add our cream of mushroom soup, and then we're gonna add our crispy onions. Now these onions are another one of those things where you guys can make them from home if you want to. In my cookbook, I have also included like a quick recipe to make crispy onions yourself from home. It's super easy to do, and I think it's like 3 ingredients if I'm remembering off the top of my head. But it is a lot of work. Like you have to coat them all and roast them in oil. You have to make sure that there's a lot of flavor packed in there. So I did do that as a part of like my experiment when I was like prepping all of this for my cookbook. And it was just so much work that I'm like, you know what? I found some of these that are, you know, meat and dairy free. So they're plant-based, and I just got them off of Amazon. Again, linked in the description below. And it just makes things so much easier. So it's a moment of truth. It's magic time. Yes, we are right on time for all of this. So, because what you guys didn't know, I have a little surprise. Just wait. So, here's what we're gonna do. Cream of mushroom soup, done. It looks gorgeous. I don't know if you could see the texture, but it's nice and thickened. And what we're gonna do is pour this straight over our green beans. Smells so good. And I already know, because I refined this recipe, that the salt and pepper situation in here is exactly what I like it to be. But I would highly recommend giving this a quick taste before you dump it in. Add a little bit more salt and pepper to your liking, and make sure that it's everything that you want it to be. That's one of the big things that I've found is when I'm cooking someone else's recipe, I always want to taste it as I go, because oftentimes it's a little bland or it's just like a little bit off from my personal liking. So I'd highly recommend doing that. So before we're gonna add our onions, actually, I am going to give this a quick stir. I want to make sure all of these green beans are coated with the soup. I wish I can give you guys a better angle. Oh my God, this weighs a ton. I could like go to the gym and do squats with this, seriously. But I don't know if you guys can tell. It's very thick and it's very creamy. And if you want it to be even a little thicker than this, you can add a little bit more flour, or you can reduce it down a little bit more, because if you think about it, like I said before, to me, the texture of this part of the green bean casserole is very important. And this is already hot. Like the cream and mushroom soup is already hot. So sometimes when you cook with things, you'll add in something when it's cold and it'll be a nice, thick, creamy texture. And then by the time you heat it up or you bake it in the oven, it gets all watery and weird. That's actually genuinely some of the issues that I had when I was testing some of these recipes with like other types of ingredients. Just did not work out properly. So if you want this a little bit thicker, feel free again to add a little bit more flour, reduce it down a little bit more. But I think that this is absolutely perfect. And then what we're gonna do is add a cup of these gorgeous crispy onions. You can add a little bit more than this if you want, but I find a cup is good. And then you're just gonna mix these around because we want it to be in this bottom layer of the casserole here, just to give it a little bit of crispiness and extra texture, extra flavor when we bite in. So then now that that's done, you could add another cup of these crispy onions. I don't know if you guys, have you ever just, yeah, these crispy onions are delicious. My coworker at work was like, I love those crispy onions. I put them on salads. I eat them with everything. I'm like, right? They're so good. I was like, trying to not just eat these. Since this is a massive thing, I'm going to add a little bit more. And voila. If you want to add a little bit of vegan Parmesan cheese with this, would go really, really great as well. But we're just going to throw this in and bake it as is. And it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. So I mentioned that I had a surprise. I don't know if you've forgotten. I didn't lie. I didn't forget. So sneak attack. I don't know if you're ready for it. I have been secretly baking another casserole in here. Remember when I preheated this oven? Yeah. I was actually cooking one the whole time. You didn't even know. Yes. Oh my gosh. So good. I'm gonna pop this guy in. Guess what Tony and I are having for dinner tonight and tomorrow night and the night after and then all next week at Thanksgiving? Green bean casserole. We just love it so much. I'm kidding. We really do love it. So, oh, I don't want to touch it. It's too hot. This is the finished product. I like to bake it so these onions get a little crispy, get a little brown on top. The cream and mushroom soup does slightly thicken a little bit more, so the texture is divine. Now I'm gonna give this a quick taste, as I always do at the end of my videos, because we have to know how it tastes. We can't sit here and cook this whole thing and not know. This just came out of the oven. I'm probably gonna burn my mouth. We won't burn. Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm okay eating this for 3 nights because we have a plethora. We're gonna be feeding the neighborhood with how much green bean casserole that I just made. So this is absolutely good. Absolutely delicious. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me tonight, for watching this. If you guys want more Thanksgiving recipes, be sure to tap or click the screen